This video will divide people into three groups. Those that like it and will love me for it, those who hate it and will brand me the hater or sinner, and those that really don't know what they're talking about because they just clicked on this video. If you're one of them, I recommend clicking the card up there to find either my playlist or my video, which I did last. That'll get you up to speed before continuing. Otherwise you won't know where I'm going and you will struggle. You have been warned, but if you wish to carry on, I hope you enjoy this video. Homosexuality, according to a notable body of fundamentalist Christians, is one of the most hated sins. They say that it offends God, goes against nature, and is a moral wrong. The strange thing is, though, after some stories came to light, I think that God, if he has such a vindictive stance on homosexuality, he doesn't seem to have much action put against it. If anything, he seems rather blasé about it. Some things that are trending on social media have suggested the same. Like an activist who claimed natural disasters were sent by God to punish homosexuals. His rally was flooded out. That's slightly ironic. And a young man who was sent to a Christian summer camp by his parents to cure his homosexuality came home with his boyfriend. Out of this knowledge and awareness of celebrities and others who have same gender preferences and are yet unencumbered by the wrath of God in any way, shape or form, despite not only celebrating their gender preferences, but often denouncing God utterly. This raises a very important question, not just by me, but by other people. Does God hate homosexuality? I have done extensive studies into this, as it's not an easy topic to look for. And it has resulted in multiple changes of view, surprising turns, and some remarkable discoveries. But I believe that I have found the answer, though it is not one some people will like. I'm very aware I'll be hated by quite a few people for this. But I'm afraid this is what I come up with. If you just want the short answer, it is yes. But not for the reasons that we have been told. If you want the long answer, well, that will explain not only those reasons, but why it doesn't cause us problems today. So let's delve into this and find out what God actually feels about homosexuality. To start off with, let's look at the most famous case of God exacting his wrath on homosexuals. The razing of Sodom. People say Sodom and Gomorrah, but Gomorrah is merely mentioned in passing and we don't know what her sins were. Sodom, we actually get to visit in the Bible. It's a well-worn tale of warning about how the people of Sodom were eagerly practicing homosexuality, and God brought judgment down on them. But the story isn't immediately clear on anything. The context is vague, and most biblical versions start off with stating that two angels of presumably male countenance arrive at the gates of Sodom and were duly granted generous lodgment by Lot, who bid them welcome, fed them, and gave them sleeping quarters. Before they were asleep, however, all the men of the city came demanding to see the men and to know them. Now, the older versions of the Bible have the phrase know them. Due to the original being in Hebrew, the translation to English is hard to understand, and my attempts to find translations, or translate it personally, haven't really gotten anywhere. But it's implied it means know them sexually. On the face of it, by the King James Bible and other older works, it isn't obvious and needs the clarification of Lot offering his two virgin daughters to get the sexual side across. The rest is fairly easy to understand. Lot and his family flee, and the city is razed to the ground. So, what do we gather from this? But not a lot at first sight, as it's very vague and the sexual connotation doesn't even come across. On the second, you get an idea of the sins of Sodom and the view that God has on it. On the third viewing, something else comes to light. The whole male population came out to know the new men amongst them. A whole gang of people demanding intercourse with only two is intimidating, to say the least. And regardless of the gender of the victim or the perpetrators, this would quite simply be called gang rape, which is a horrible thing. No matter the circumstances, it's just horrible. The fact they show a preference for men compared to a couple of virgin girls can suggest the implication of homosexual copulation being their downfall. But since neither the men nor the girls were taken in this story, it's the homosexual standpoint that seems to be implied above all. Another interpretation could be that the men of Sodom just didn't know the men they were demanding to know so intimately were angelic, and so were damned for their lack of sight. But the fact that the angels were protected from sight by Lot makes this seem unlikely. Though it is written the men at the entrance were struck with blindness, a common enough thing to happen to the sinful gazing upon the divine. It could also imply that it could be violation of hospitality, the obvious threat of violence being against any culture's definition of guest rights. In short, to understand the story of Sodom, you have to read deeper and know the translations. But even then, it leaves more questions than answers, and suggests that aggressive pagan cultures like the Vikings, and even their most violent gods like the Jotnar, have a better idea of how to treat a guest than many modern Christian households. It's been worthwhile thinking about. So let's move on to the first place that the Lord openly declares his hatred for homosexuality. This being in the book of Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 13, where he not only declares this act to be an abomination, but orders the perpetrators to be put to death, declaring it is their own doing. And the good book says, if a man has sex with another man, as he does with a woman, both of them have done what is abhorrent. They must be put to death, and they are responsible for their own deaths. 3 things should be considered with this particular verse. Firstly, the phrasing. If a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman. What stands out in this implication is that the man in question is lying with not only men but also women. This may be political correctness gone mad, but that is not homosexual but bisexual. Second, the word abomination, meaning to be hated by God in biblical terms. It's also used in the common vernacular to mean disgrace, horror, obscenity, and repugnance. Certainly for a heterosexual person, the sight or even the thought of 2 men copulating isn't a pleasant one. Having had such thoughts myself, it's certainly not a pleasant thing to have going round your head. Then again, neither is the thought of one's parents, or heaven forbid, one's grandparents, copulating in the God-approved manner. But the fact that you are even around to have those thoughts, and I'll apologise if I have put those thoughts in your head, it just shows that, well, it did happen successfully. So this leads to a more practical point and a question why. God, being an incredibly practical being, means he's not going to waste life needlessly. The lies in question here are the Israelites in the wilderness. And God furthermore has the act of murder named as a sin in his commandments. So why does he have another rule for those who commit such a sin? This answer is often provided by modern day homophobic people. The act of copulation is for reproduction and is something that can't be done by homosexual couples. That is true enough. Thirdly, homosexuality is not alone. This sin is in a list of many sins in this chapter that are punishable by death or exile. And they include adultery, incest, and bestiality. They are also punishable by death. Marrying both a woman and her mother is punishable by burning at the stake. Arguably a worse punishment than both. Many of these sins, by their perpetrators being killed or exiled, are said to be purged from the community, and so their wickedness is removed. The thing is, one can easily see a connection with these sexual acts. They're all carrying a risk of spreading sexually transmitted diseases. These STDs, including HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and many more, would have been common enough in Old Testament times, and the likelihood of cures being available to the general populace are slim. Nearly every time someone has sex, they risk catching or transmitting such diseases. Since God can perceive life on all levels of existence, and is doubtless aware of these, this puts the sins into a different perspective and explains them almost perfectly. The only way to prevent the children of Israel from being unnecessarily at risk and bringing these diseases into the promised lands is to remove those people who continue to spread these diseases from the community, either by exiling them or putting them to death. It may seem harsh, but you get right down to it, there's not a lot you can do in those situations. Either get rid of it or burn it. That's their only options in those days. Add all this together, and you can see that homosexuality isn't even the main target in this chapter. The only verse that gets anywhere near that argument is clearly more about bisexuality, and the overall sin is the unnecessary spreading of STDs, which could be culpable by homosexuals, but so can many other people. People who are willing to copulate with both sexes are more likely to spread these diseases because the homosexual copulation will risk transmission and have no added benefit for the population. This benefit being the potential of giving birth to life. Not only is Leviticus quoted out of context, it is actually quite unreliable as a source of a homophobic argument. The above point is proven by the rampant spread of STDs amongst modern homosexual communities. Any sexually active couple will tell you that sex doesn't always happen due to the desire for new life, but for other reasons as well. Modern contraceptives can stem the spread of STDs, and modern medicine helps identify and treat such diseases. In this day and age, there really isn't any reason to fear such things outside the ordinary. And since homosexuals are less likely to spread it to the general population, and bisexuals naturally will be encouraged to be doubly careful about such things, homophobia doesn't really have any basis in Scripture, and any fears that we may have are answerable in modern times, thanks to our advancing understanding of the world around us. It may seem unnatural, to be sure, but homosexuality exists amongst animals. Many birds have exhibited it, as has quite a few mammals. We are subject to the natural laws, as St. Paul said. So, this is a very natural thing. Like any good Christian, if I'm ever in doubt about this, I look to the word of Jesus in the New Testament. Christ being not only God's own Son, but also God among us. That's one of his many names. Jesus had very little to say on the matter of homosexuality. But since he declared marriage to be between a man and a woman, there's a strong implication to the anti-gay. However, this is countermanded, I believe, by something I read one Easter that actually started this whole question in the first place. This all started with a view sparked by a particular passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 23 to 25. Let me put it in context for you. This is during the Last Supper, and Jesus had just announced that one of his disciples, who were amongst them, will betray him. And this naturally confuses people. And so, the verse goes thus. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So, while reclining next to him, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" This is the least suggestive of all the Bible translations. This is from the New Revised Standard Version, the Catholic edition. Many others, and I've looked through a fair few, are far, far more implicit, saying that the disciple is lying against him on his bosom or breast. Not in the Amplified version with all its notes and quotations repeats this. Physical closeness implies intimacy regardless of gender or age difference, particularly in those days. Whilst the disciples had a privilege that we on earth couldn't hope to have, that being Jesus' physical presence in their midst. And that alone is incredibly intimate. Physical closeness to one in particular is incredibly suggestive, along with a particular turn of phrase seen only in the Gospel of John. The disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, scholars have done studies to identify this disciple, and it has been concluded that it must be John the Apostle, a male. Many would point out that Jesus loved all, and this particular love is the Greek agape, meaning a reverent love. I even brought this up with some atheist and paganistic friends of mine, and they pointed out this very same thing. However, I raised the same question with them as I'm raising now. Why mention him in those terms at all? In some versions, it even says dearly loved, beloved, or loved above all, implying something special. Furthermore, the term agape, whilst commonly used for love to or from a god, can still be used as one's feelings for a spouse. Many a couple will say they revere their partner. This implied to me, for quite a while I've shared this with people, the idea of Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, being potentially gay. And I mean that in the homosexual terms. Now, before you start blowing up the comments, call me a heathen, whatever, I feel obliged to say that I studied this extremely carefully and meditated on it, and have finally come to the conclusion that it's not the case. I dismiss this idea. But not the feeling that he has allowed homosexuality. and is more open to that behaviour than many of us would think. Jesus himself wasn't gay, but John certainly was. And yet Jesus allowed it, even naming him the disciple he loved the most. So this great sin isn't a dark spiritual tainting by any means, but a physical risk of spreading a disease unnecessarily, which, while certainly a cause for concern in biblical times and can be considered a sin, is not only cleared up by modern medicine and procedures of protection, but is also handled by a simpler method of containment. What is remarkably simple, remarkably common these days, and yet is another extremely controversial topic. But that is one we will cover next week. So stay tuned for that. The comments will be open below, but I must ask you to please be civil in your comments. If you're just there to insult me, you will not be listened to. If you happen to like this video, by all means give it a thumbs up. If you're not totally happy with it, give it a thumbs down. But by all means share it with people who might be interested in this particular view. Ultimately, I just hope to spread a little bit more love in this world. It seems to me that Christ is allowing just that, in all shapes and forms. So, until next week, stay safe, share the love, have pride, and may God be with you.